Nostalgia is one of the most powerful emotions humans experience, and as far as science can tell, we might be the only species on Earth who actually feels it. But what is it actually doing to our brain? Why does it have such a grip on us? And why was it once considered a really deadly disease? Let's go down this rabbit hole while I build a nostalgic arcade in my brand new Planet Coaster Park. The word nostalgia didn't always mean a warm feeling about old things. For 200 years, it was a diagnosis, and a very serious one. The kind that could get you sent home from war. The kind that could also kill you. In 1688, a Swiss medical student named Johannes Hofer sat down to write his dissertation. He'd been observing something very strange happening to Swiss soldiers. Switzerland was considered neutral in most of the war that was tearing apart Europe at the time. But Swiss mercenaries were everywhere. They fought for France, for Spain, for anyone who could pay well, and they kept getting sick in a way that no one could actually explain. Their hearts pounded irregular. They lost their appetite, they couldn't sleep, some developed fevers, some started hallucinating voices, seeing people from back home. They became hollow-eyed, indifferent to the world around them, and then sometimes they died. Hofer needed a name for what he was seeing. He went back to ancient Greek, nostos meaning the return home and algos meaning pain. He stitched it together, nostalgia, literally the pain of wanting to go home. After Hofer realized this nostalgia brain disease link, he believed the soldiers' vital spots were so fixated on memories of Switzerland, they abandoned the rest of their body, leaving it to slowly shut itself off. By modern medical standards, of course, we know that to be nonsense, but the symptoms he was describing were actually real, and the deaths were real as well. And the medical world took him seriously for the next 200 years. If you were diagnosed with nostalgia in the 17 or 1800s, your doctor had some options, but none of them were very pleasant. The most humane treatment was sending you home, and this actually worked. Soldiers who were furloughed back to Switzerland, they tended to recover really quickly. The problem was no army wants to keep dumping all their soldiers back to return to their homes. So other treatments were more creative, less kind. One Swiss doctor named, and I'm going to butcher their name, Johann Jacob Scheuser, decided the disease wasn't really about home at all. He thought it was about air pressure. The Swiss lived in a high-altitude mountainous country, and when they described some of their symptoms, they thought it was a descension to the lower altitude that was thickening up their blood. The cure he suggested was to put them all in towers, which the altitude difference would then right the ship. It did not work, but it also didn't kill anybody, which puts it at the top tier of nostalgia treatments because some of the other ones, they did. In 1733, a Russian commander grew tired of his troops falling sick with nostalgia, so he picked one of them and buried him alive as a warning to the others. The reports don't say whether morale did improve, though. During the French Revolution, a physician named Jourdain prescribed what he called pain and terror as the cure. The reasoning was if you made the present so horribly unbearable, the patient would just stop thinking about the past. Bloodletting was really common. Purgatives were common. Some doctors prescribed leeches. Others tried opium. The condition was real. The patients were sick. And the medical world kept reaching for tools, even when none of the tools they had worked. And then came the American Civil War. The Union Army kept careful medical records, and in those records, over 5,000 soldiers were diagnosed with nostalgia. More than 70 of them died. That's not a metaphor. That's not they died of related causes. Those are men whose cause of death, written on the official record, is nostalgia. A feeling killed them, or at least that's what doctors of that time were believing. So what was killing these soldiers? The honest modern answer is probably not nostalgia. It is probably some combination of post-traumatic stress, depression, malnutrition, infection, and exhaustion, all of which we now have separate names for. The 17th and 18th century doctors had one bucket. A soldier who is wasting away like this, with no obvious wounds, has nostalgia. But that doesn't mean the feeling itself wasn't doing something real to them. because we know now pretty precisely why nostalgia is the way it is and what it's actually doing inside your skull. When you experience nostalgia, a memory pops up. Two completely different systems in your brain initiate. The first is the memory system, the hippocampus. Deep in your temporal lobe, this small region retrieves the memory itself. Now, I say small in kind of a relative way because your brain has very large and very tiny regions, so obviously relative to itself, these regions can have different sizes and thus different effects. The medial prefrontal cortex pulls in your sense of self. You say inside your head something like, "This happened to me." Together, these regions construct the moment. The second is the reward system. This is a totally different structure. It's a set of structures. The ventral tegmental area, the substantia nigra, the ventral striatum. These are the same structures that fire when you eat sugar, fall in love, or win money. They are dopamine release. That's the trick. That's what makes nostalgia different from any other kind of remembering. When you recall a normal memory, what you ate for lunch yesterday, where you parked your car, your memory system runs completely alone. When you recall nostalgia, your memory system and your reward system fire off together. The brain is essentially making that moment as concrete as possible. And here's where it gets really strange if it wasn't already. Because the reward system is involved, dopamine is being released, and dopamine does not just feel good. Dopamine influences how memories are actually stored in your brain. Every time you revisit a nostalgic memory, you're not just remembering it, you're re-encoding it on your brain. The dopamine release strengthens the memory and subtly reshapes it. The brain edits it to feel a little better than the original event actually was, too. For 300 years, nostalgia was considered a disease, a pathology, a weakness of the mind. That was completely flipped over in the last 20 years or so. Two researchers at the University of Southampton, Constantine and Tim, started running experiments in the early 2000s asking a simple question: what does nostalgia actually do to people? They didn't expect what they were going to find. Nostalgia, it turns out, is one of the most beneficial emotions a human can experience. People who feel nostalgia show measurable increases in their self-esteem. They report a stronger sense of meaning in life. They feel more connected to other people. They're more willing to ask for help. They're more resilient against loneliness, against stress, against the existential weight of knowing they're going to die someday. The same feeling the 17th century doctors believed was actually killing soldiers turns out to be one of the things that was keeping them alive. Research now suggests nostalgia is a kind of psychological immune system. When your life destabilizes, when you move, you lose someone, you change a job, you get old, nostalgia will kick in automatically. It reminds you who you really are. It reconnects you to the people who have shaped you. It tells your brain in a chemical way, deeper than words, that you are loved, that you have mattered, that you belong. It's not a disease. It's the brain's way of holding you steady when the ground shifts under you. Which finally brings us back to Planet Coaster 2 and this park. I'm building this arcade as the first real structure in the park. Yes, there's buildings and there's rides all around this, but they're mostly just bones right now. Paths laid out, rides plopped down, buildings sort of sketched in. Nothing is set in stone. And I picked an arcade on purpose because if you understand what nostalgia is, what it's actually doing in the brain, then you understand that arcades are a kind of cheat code for this in the amusement park world. Look at the building for a second. There's a Tudor cottage to the left. Old, timbered, the kind of structure that's supposed to feel like it's been standing there for a while. And bolted right into it is a flat gray concrete box covered in banners and neon, and the word PLAYLAND in 3-foot tall letters. That's not an accident. That's how real arcades look and how they happened. They didn't get that way on purpose. They moved into whatever space was available. the back of a bowling alley, an old storefront, a corner at the seaside pavilions. The arcade was always the loud, new, flashy thing, crammed in with the old, vintage arcade games and lights. I wanted this architectural feel, this building to feel cheap and kind of 90s or 80s, sort of nostalgic. And once you're inside, every nostalgia trigger the research identified is doing its job. Sound, the chiptune loops, the coin drop, the rattle of skee ball, touch, the worn joystick, the cold metal of the claw machine game, sight, the neon, the glowing cabinets, the specific palette of pink and purple and electric blue that your brain flies and screams, oh my gosh, this is 80 and 90s. Social memories, skee ball lanes side by side, basketball hoops in pairs, because almost no one played these games alone. There was always somebody there with you or next to you. An arcade in a theme park isn't a ride. It's not a thrill. It's a deliberate constructed memory machine. You walk in, your hippocampus lights up, your reward system fires, your brain quietly edits this moment into a memory that you're going to possibly polish forever. That's why almost every great park has one. Disney has one, Universal has them. The old regional parks built them right by the gate because they understood without knowing the nuances. A guest who feels nostalgia spends more, stays longer, comes back. The arcade is doing emotional infrastructure work. It's not strictly entertainment. It's a foundation. So that's the first building finished, an arcade, designed not to look impressive, but to feel like somewhere you've been, somewhere you have thought about or have visited. The cabinets are arranged in the slightly chaotic way that a real arcade is. Not in a clean grid. The light is warm. It's a little uneven. The whole palette leans into the era that gave us the modern arcade and the cultural memories of it. I don't expect anyone to walk through this and have a perfect childhood flashback. That's not how nostalgia works. What I'm hoping is that something in here, a shape, a color, the old fortune teller behind the glass, quietly hooks into that system we've been talking about for the last 10 minutes and does its small work. So that's nostalgia, a feeling that was once a death sentence, a feeling we now know is two brain systems firing in tandem, quietly rewriting your past into something kinder, a feeling that turns out to be one of the most useful things the human mind can do. And this arcade, it's just the first room on that journey. I need your help with something. This park does not yet have a name. I deliberately didn't pick one before I started because I wanted to wait until I met with you and ask you to help me name it. I think this park wants a name that has weight to it, something that hints at memories and nostalgia and warmth. But I don't want to just pick it myself. So go to the comments and tell me, what should I call this park? I'll read every comment, I always do. And the best suggestions will get put to vote by the community. And the winner, that's what the park will be named. One more thing before I let you go. Nostalgia isn't the only strange thing humans do. Community is another one. And it's getting harder and harder to find a good one anymore. I made a video about this a few weeks ago, and it's on the screen right around now. Thanks for going down this rabbit hole with me. I'll see you in the next one.